Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems. I'm flying solo for this episode as my partner, Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, is taking a well-deserved vacation. As sales professionals, we know that if we can be seen as trusted experts rather than peddlers, we will attract more clients, develop stronger relationships, and maintain a better profit margin. The question is, how do we elevate ourselves to that level of proficiency? Fortunately for all of us, our guest, Kelli Schutrop, is an expert in this approach. So listen closely as we discuss thought leadership activation on episode 591 of the Winning at Selling podcast. Well, everyone, as usual, when we have a guest, we won't have our book club. But be ready next week to discuss Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. We're on Chapter 7, Opening the Call. So I'm excited today to have our guest with us, Kelli Schutrop. She's going to talk about thought leadership activation, and she's going to tell us what that means. But Kelli is the CEO and founder of Thoughtful Resound, a thought leadership activation firm that unlocks new revenue streams for growing B2B companies through thought leadership, social selling, personal branding, and beyond. As an experienced sales and marketing leader, she has a passion for accelerating business growth and has 15 years of expertise spanning digital marketing, brand marketing, consultative selling, on-camera hosting, and speaking. Kelli's career highlights include scaling startups, growing marketing functions, establishing sales structures, and consulting business leaders globally on their growth strategies. Kelli, welcome to the Winning at Selling podcast.
Thank you, Bill. I'm excited to be here and have some great dialogue, especially around thought leadership and how it helps salespeople make their lives a whole lot easier. And
I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to have you because I don't know a lot about this. I'm a thought leader, but how do we get that information out into the world and have people recognize us? I think that's a difficult thing to do for many people. So I'm at your feet as your student this time. Well, tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up starting your own business, going out on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when it comes to this world of thought leadership activation, sharing my background is probably going to be helpful just to gain context on what it is, why it's something that companies are chatting with me about, and how you, as the listener in a sales capacity can start adopting these behaviors to help really your book of business continue growing, despite what's going on with the economy and different industries. So
there's something going on with the economy?
Yeah, who knew?
Who knew?
Right?
Who knew?
What's AI? I don't even know. Just kidding. But yes, so my background, like you said, spans about 15 years. The first half of my career was focused in marketing, the second half in consultative selling. And just to give you kind of a quick narrative, I studied public relations and marketing in school, went the ad agency route. So, building campaigns for big brands and starting to get a taste for what that was like. And then found my way into the staffing industry, which if anyone here is a part of that industry, you kind of you happen upon it. It's a connection. And then all of a sudden you're there.
Right.
And so I built marketing from the ground up for a few different executive search and consulting firms. And part of that process was taking and acknowledging that there was these really strong, deep expertise folks that were selling executive search, for example, services. So we had a few people that, used to be CFOs and then pivoted to now place those, or used to be a deep HR practitioner, right? Like raising all the way through VP, C-suite, and then switching over and now placing people. So they had a deep expertise in what they were now essentially providing as a service. And what I realized pretty early on, and it's not rocket science, is that, so much marketing is typically poured into the brand and people buy from people. Right? Like, yes, you want to know what that brand is. You want to know that it's present. There's a lot of credibility checks that happen when people go to the website and want to just vet and identify what is your product or service that you're selling me.
Well, especially in consulting, right? I mean, you can say all the things that you've done, but really it's that feeling that they get from sitting across the table from you that I could work with this person. They have good ideas. They seem to know what they're talking about. And I'm going to entrust my business to them.
Right. Absolutely. And whether it's something that, you're in a SaaS sales capacity and you are trying to identify what core challenges your potential client is facing. And if more than just your champion feels those challenges, so that there's
Right.
actually a use case for what you're offering, or your service and consulting, and it's something where you're going to be working directly with them in a short-term or long-term capacity. You're right, Bill. I mean, people want to know, is what you're offering just going to pad your wallet, or is what you're offering actually going to solve my challenge?
Mm-hmm.
And so as I got into these different marketing leadership roles within these organizations, instead of just focusing on the brand and the division level, we started focusing on the individual level and building what I call hubs of influence around these different sales professionals. So saying, okay, Joe, for example, when he gets in a conversation with someone, it's gold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine that most of you listening experience this, right? Like you're in this business because you're good at what you do. You believe in whatever it is you're selling and you're offering to potential clients. But the challenge is kind of kicking out ahead of that conversation and saying, how do we get more people to know that Joe or Jill, right, like, is really an expert at this topic, and
Right.
companies should want to talk to them, even if they're not in a place to buy today.
How can
but
we
it's
convince
something on
them?
their
How
mind.
can we convince them that when you have a conversation with Joe, it's going to be gold?
Right. Well, and
Right.
how do we even let them know about Joe?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so some of the areas that we'll call activations that we started dabbling in was around things like hosting, day-long conferences, if it
Mm-hmm.
was local, where the brand represented the conference. The brand was the one that was inviting, handpicking really ideal prospects and current clients to that. But we assembled a panel. The brand assembled a panel that was like, okay, here are people we want to be working with that we're not right now, or people that we have worked with. And let's talk about a topic that is relevant to everyone in this audience. Let's say that audience is HR. Let's say that audience is a group of marketers. And so it's starting to position that brand, but also that person as a thought leader in the space. So and I'll get through the rest of my career and why this has made a pivot to sales, and why I've personally seen such benefit of applying this mindset of thought leadership activation beyond just, it's exciting for marketing to say, yes, we did it and we generated leads. Like, yes, of course, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that mean for you as a salesperson? So I will get to that, but I will say what we started finding is that the more that we created these, hubs of influence around people, their ideal clients would come out of the woodwork and say, I've been seeing things you're posting. I've been seeing things you're talking about. And it's just something that I'm musing on, this challenge that I'm having. Can we just chat? And it sometimes was an immediate sales conversation. And sometimes it was more just a conversation that then
Right.
opened up doors down the road. And so the company that I was with, again, executive search and consulting, we created a digital marketing agency that specialized in the staffing industry across the country. And I helped build that out and stepped very squarely after it was built out into the sales role. And it was something that I had done retail sales before and excelled at it, in college, but I had never done it in, we'll call it a professional setting. And it was something that I wanted to just explore and experiment. And there was a few key competitors in that space that had been around for a long, long time. And I had the mindset of, I don't want to do the equivalent of applying for 1 million jobs and no one ever sees me. Like, I don't want to send cold emails and come off like a commodity and kind of beg people to let me in the door, even if they don't see the value of what we're offering. And we have this epic story of like, we grew this for our own brand and it massively increased revenue. So we can help do this for you. Right. So that was the mindset. And instead of taking the approach of outbound, I, being a marketer, took the approach of building thought leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, I'm no longer operating in a local market because our sister company competes with so many of the brands in this market. So I have to go national. I don't know these people yet, and they do not know me yet.
Right.
So I said, okay, we've got a few clients today that are in this space. I'm going to ask them if they would be willing to hop on a Zoom call, and I hit record. This was also post-pandemic, or like, I guess pre-pandemic and then into post-pandemic.
Sure.
So it's just getting to be a different world. I said, if we could just hit record and talk about this particular topic that I know you are pumped about, you're excited about, it's not giving away your secret sauce, and others in the industry would benefit from. And I had a few people say, yeah, I would love to hop on the call with you, Kelli. Like, absolutely. And so I started creating a fireside chat series where, similar to a podcast, I would record a conversation. I would put it out in the world ungated, so people didn't have to fill out contact information to access it. And it just started to evolve and snowball. And it did two things. One, it started getting the brand known, but it also started building myself as a hub of influence in the space,
Right.
where people started realizing, if I have a question about digital marketing in the staffing world, I'm going to talk to Kelli. But something else it did is it allowed me to get in front of sales conversations that I would not otherwise have been able to. So over time, I started developing panels. So you think about, you attend a conference, you've got your moderator and you've got your panel of 4 or 5, however many, 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
I started assembling conversations like that and selecting people that I would love to work with that we weren't working with today.
So the panels were potential customers,
yes,
but also experts that could give information to people and answer questions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'd pick a topic that I knew was relevant to my space. So this would be, to put it through your lens as you're listening, whoever your ideal audience is, the things and the pain points that they're experiencing. You do not have to be like the deep expert on all the topics. You can be if you are, because that's your background. Amazing. But there's just that much more third-party credibility that comes when you add more voices to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But how amazing if you add not only maybe a current customer, a non-competitive peer that you would refer business back and forth to, and then a few people that you would love to work with, that conversation just has not been breached from a sales standpoint for whatever reason. Even if you've tried a million times, most people are also trying to build their personal brands, and they're intrigued by the idea of coming into a conversation and sharing a topic that they're passionate about. And so that is one example of a thought leadership activation, a fireside chat. And so I started doing different activations, right? Like doing little insights videos. We'd done that actually for years, even before the pandemic, where 2 to 3 minutes, we'd hop on camera, share a tip or two that, you could kind of get in a blog worth of content. Myself and one other individual, we'd bounce back and forth and share tips and post it on social. And it just started building this repertoire of content, but also some pretty cool credibility and expertise, so that anywhere people looked, I was showing up and the brand was showing up. And people started to ask me to be on podcasts. I started pitching to do webinars and conference speaking, and it just really exploded. And every business model is different, obviously. But in the digital marketing world, the agency world, for me, it was amazing. We partnered with over 150 companies in under 4 years, which in the SaaS model, that's not, it's a very different model, but in more of a ongoing retainer model, it's significant. And so it was something that I had an aha moment, because I'm a marketer applying my mindset to how I sell. And it felt way more authentic to me than just knocking on doors and asking people for a conversation, because I started getting inbound leads so frequently that I had to develop partnerships of where they could go if they weren't a fit for our agency anymore. Because we were then able to elevate 3 different times, revenue models, essentially.
So when you describe this process of having these conversations, getting online, bringing these thought leaders together, putting it on social media, this is what you call thought leadership.
Yeah, I would define thought leadership really is that core between sales, marketing, and customer success. So put differently, I believe that every person in sales, every person who's a key leader within their organization, has expertise in a space, right? I mean, if you're just a few years out of school, it might be a different space. Like you're starting to kind of acclimate. But let's say you're a seasoned sales professional, you have knowledge to share. And if you're finding yourself in conversations with clients, with prospective clients, when it's face-to-face, one-on-one, and there's aha moments for them, you're like, I'd never thought about it that way. Like you're not just selling the product, right? Like you're selling a potential solution to a challenge they have, and you're relating to them and trying to define how you two can work together. And I would venture to say that if you're good at sales, you don't view it as a one-way road of no matter what, my product is best for you. You probably hit scenarios where you learn more about their challenges and you're not the best product or service, and you share that with them, right? Like that's the consultative piece. And so,
or I need to bring someone in that has some expertise.
Yeah.
I might have half of it and someone else has the other half.
Yeah. Right. So it's like being able to actually try to do what's best for the customer, regardless of if it is getting you more commission at the end of the day. Right. And that just attracts more goodwill essentially, because they know
Right.
that you're not just out to earn a check based on their challenge, which obviously as a sales professional there's a ton of incentive around that. I'm highly incentivized by that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as you're trying to do right by your client.
Yeah, I think it's easier to do right when you're not starving.
Absolutely,
When you're really
absolutely.
desperate for business, it's like, oh yeah, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
But when you're doing okay, not only can you maintain a better pricing structure, but you can say no to some things or pass
Mhm.
some things on more comfortably to someone else. And the interesting thing is when you free yourself from that grabbing attitude, you seem to get more business.
It's so
And
true. And it is really difficult if you're in a season where there's external circumstances that you cannot control. Maybe the space you're selling into is experiencing mass layoffs right now, and the last thing they want to do is hear from a salesperson. That's
mhm,
tough, and you can't
mhm,
control that. But with this thought leadership activation mindset, uh, what I would challenge you in and encourage you to do is to say, okay, how can I get out of my head the things are in my head that right now, let's say, and these are me making assumptions, they don't add value unless you're in a one-on-one conversation, unless you are actively in front of someone. No one is benefiting from the things that are in your head that you can help them with. And
yeah,
how do we create mechanisms that get that out of your head and kick out ahead of you, whether it's through social selling on LinkedIn, right? Like starting to post thoughtful content, starting to interact with people that you would love to work with. Like, we all get so many emails and so many cold emails, but most people are trying to build a brand on LinkedIn to a
hmm
degree, including your buyers. And so, when you go to a post of someone that you would love to set a meeting with and you see that there's only been one comment on that post and it is someone within their own company, if you comment thoughtfully, you are going to start to stand out to them.
right,
So
right,
starting to think about it in a way of like, how would you actually genuinely develop a relationship? There's certainly a process to it, but then it develops this mechanism where, to your point, Bill, you're starting to get opportunities coming to you because people know you as the person that can help them at least navigate a potential challenge. And another way that I phrase it is, if you can help make your clients' problems visible and solvable, they will view you as an expert in their
yeah.
space. And
So
when
it
they have a
sounds
need
like
for what you do, they'll come back.
so it sounds like that we need to start giving first, giving
And
of our
yeah,
ideas, giving of
yeah.
ourselves, commenting for people, not with the thought, oh, if I comment, they'll contact me, but just to
Mhm.
have an attitude of giving that says, I'm going to be looking out on social media for people who I would like to do business with and try to develop a
Mhm.
relationship with them by giving them ideas and advice and commenting on
Mhm.
their posts.
Yeah. If you think about personal training, right? You see personal trainers post all this content about the types of workouts and the things to eat. And most of them don't seem to be too concerned that they'll never get business. Like,
Hmm.
yes, you can do all those things on your own. But when you hit a point that you want to hire an expert to help you get to the next level, who are you going to reach out to?
Right.
The people that you've already been following to get that insight from. It's the same principle. And if you're familiar with the challenger model, right, it's all about helping them navigate what their challenge is and how they've
Hmm.
tried to solve it and how other people are solving it. And oh, by the way, we solve it this way, you
Right.
know. And so it's more of not leading with the product or service, but leading with really the education. And it does feel a lot more genuine and authentic to get in a conversation with someone and know, regardless of where this goes, I hope they walk out of it with some insight.
Right.
And typically it turns into a sales conversation and it's a lot of fun. And I had another role where it was more focused on outbound sales, because the company wasn't quite at the place to start developing this thought leadership approach. And so I experienced what that was like, selling into enterprise outbound, and it is tough. And it gave me this aha moment of, I don't want to do it this way. you know, I can't imagine people are loving trying to put together all these campaigns. And I'm not saying that,
Oh,
you
if
know,
I get one more LinkedIn invite whose only goal is to send me a message 5 minutes later that they can
right.
what they can do business with me, it's like I appreciate that you're trying to do this. I'm in sales
Mhm.
myself, but you really never even looked at my profile,
Yeah.
and because I have this keyword, you reached out to me. You never sent a
Mhm.
message until you wanted to send a. I don't know. It just feels like it's just too automatic, too, you know,
Right.
programmed.
And there is something to a sales professional saying, this has always worked. Like if I send enough of these and I get the 1% reply rate or 3% reply rate, that's somebody. And again, this is the blessing, the challenge, whatever you want to call it, of me coming out of marketing first. That's not enough for me. Like that doesn't feel rewarding. I would far rather, host a conversation, invite someone that I'd love to work with, hear from them, learn from them, get to know them on a personal level, and then say, hey, can we talk about your business? And they may say, I really don't have a need for what you do, but like, I'm glad to meet you. Great. Cool. If we can add value together, awesome.
So it seems that, and I work in the world a lot of solopreneurs, small business people, and this is a great idea for them because they want to become thought leaders. But how about for the run of the mill, and I don't mean that as a pejorative, but your everyday salesperson that's got, 100 accounts that he or she is trying to cover, and they need to be a thought leader. Where do they find the time? What are the first couple of steps they would take? Because their company's saying, well, you don't really need to do this online stuff. Just we'll do the marketing and you do the selling.
Right. And yeah, there are a few good low-hanging fruit opportunities. And I have a full appreciation, coming from working with salespeople, marketing with them, to now having done sales for half my career. What I'm not telling you to do is don't sell for half your job. Just do marketing for half your job. Because I get that sounds like ridiculous, because you're like, that's not where my revenue comes from. Yes, maybe it could in the future. So that's a challenge to digest. But even little things like assuming your audience is on LinkedIn, post once to twice a week something that's relevant to your audience, right? Like identify, okay, this is just one option. There's another low-hanging fruit as well. But one would be, just think about, like, what are the stories, those aha moments that you are having when you are in a conversation with a prospective client. You don't have to give away their name, their company, their details, right? You want them to be comfortable if they were to see the post, that they don't feel awkward. But just that mindset of, someone approached me recently and asked me about XYZ, and I'm finding that there's a lot of people in the industry that have questions like this. This is how, and you can be pretty direct, like, this is how our company is tackling this. Like, this is how we're addressing this. And this is how we're helping companies in this area. It's almost like a selling without selling.
Right.
And as you're going out and connecting with individuals that are your ideal prospective clients, you have the opportunity to show up in the news, or you have the opportunity to show up in their newsfeed. And to take it a step further, when it comes to nerdy LinkedIn algorithm things, after you post, if you go and you comment on 3 to 4, however many people's posts that you would love to be in conversation with, LinkedIn will be far more likely to show your post in their newsfeed. So just little things like that, where you're adding value to what they're sharing, they have more of a likelihood to see what you're posting about. So that's one piece.
So don't spend your whole day on LinkedIn, but maybe take 15 minutes a day to do something active. Whether it's posting or commenting, it's got to be a consistency, doesn't it?
It's very important to be consistent. Yes, because especially as you start posting, even if it's once a week from the get-go, people will start to recognize when they see your name in the newsfeed that you're probably talking about a specific topic. I'll give you an example. There is a woman named Jen Allen. She comes out of the Challenger business model for years. She ran their podcast around, Challenger sale and talking to people in that area. Then she pivoted into the SaaS world with a company called Lavender, which helps with AI generated emails, like how to grade your emails and how to change the tone and things like that. Now she's got her own book of business where she speaks at sales kickoffs and things like that. But she does a fantastic job where her audience is salespeople. And she talks all around, like, how to work with the champion, right? If you're selling into a big organization, just because your champion says they're thrilled does not mean you have the sale.
Right.
They might get overly excited and go tell everybody all the things, but it's not a problem everybody else is facing. So Jen Allen is a good one to follow, to say, how is she approaching this? Like, because you actually are, anyone in sales, you happen to be her audience. So it'd be an interesting one to look at. And this is something that's ever evolving, right? Like, you can post content that's relevant to you as well. Like, culturally, what's going on in your world, like things that will help encourage and elevate others. But I will say another low-hanging fruit would be identify where your ideal audience spends their time when it comes to associations, organizations, events, and become a part of those.
Right.
So if there is an association and there's a conference that every year, that's where your bread and butter clients go, that's where your prospective clients go, reach out and volunteer to join a committee. Like if you become on the membership committee and you just happen to have to meet every single person that joins that organization and they happen to be a prospective client, cool. It doesn't mean you're selling in every conversation, but just having that familiarity of who you are and being around your space. I mean, that's something that I did in the staffing industry, and it was really rewarding. I met so many great people, and certainly not all of them became clients, right? I genuinely wanted to know.
But we become available. We become available to them. We're part of the group. And I agree with you 100%. Don't just be a member, be active.
Yes.
Be on some committee, be somebody who's contributing, because that's when they see that you've really invested in them and you're not just there to try and pick off clients.
Right. And then when there's an opportunity for a monthly webinar and they're looking for speakers and you throw your name in the hat, name in the ring to talk about whatever XYZ topic. And again, you're not pitching your service, but like for me, and digital marketing agency is, one of the places that I was selling for. I talked about digital marketing for the staffing industry. It doesn't mean it was a commercial for the brand, but I was talking about the common challenges companies were facing and how they were solving them. And some were through solutions that we were offering and some weren't. And so that starts to create really that hub of influence around you where you start to attract. And what happened for me personally is sitting in that sales role and then getting recruited to lead sales and marketing for another organization, and approaching it and needing to approach it through an outbound model, just with where the mindset of the company was. How do I phrase this? I had a couple different people approach me and they said, if what you're doing is ever not your forever fit, I would love to help you teach my salespeople how to build personal brands in a way that drive revenue.
So you started to hear people saying, we'd like you to come and teach to us.
Yeah. And so I just did an inventory of what gave me joy, as they say, what sparked joy for me, and where I thought that I could truly add the most value to the world. Like with the nerdy things that I have stuck in my head that I talk about anyway, if someone asks me to be on a podcast, like I talk about how do you develop a personal brand that drives revenue? Like, how do you do that? How did I do that? How does it feel way more authentic? How does it generate a load of revenue for you and your company? Right. Like, and how does it elevate the audience you're selling to? Like, to me, that's a big deal.
Right.
If you just come in and make money off of someone, like, what value are you actually adding to the world? But if you're elevating them through education, whether they become a client or not, they're going to be better off for knowing you and knowing the brand you're associated with. And so anyway, I decided I'm going to start my own company and offer fractional consulting. So I work with a number of B2B service-based companies who are looking to grow thought leadership, who have a marketer that's doing a good job. They've got salespeople and they're trying to figure out, like, how do we kind of merge? Like, how do we marry this, all the things we're doing in marketing and all the things our salespeople are doing? Like, how do we build those hubs of influence around them? And I also do, key leader workshops and things like that for sales teams and salespeople who are trying to identify kind of how to activate this mindset and how to get it off the ground and just ideate, like, where does my ideal audience spend their time? What are things that I can engage in that doesn't take up half my time, but could seriously generate a return and feel a lot more rewarding than just trying to figure out what the subject line on the next big mail email blast needs to be, and if that will get everyone to reply.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Well, I can't believe how fast the time has gone in this podcast. We're just about at a half hour. I want to ask you a couple of questions. One is my favorite one of my partners, Scott. So to honor him, he always wants to know who's the most influential author? What book have you read recently that really resonates with you? Who do you tend to follow? So kind of who's your influence?
Yeah, good question. And I know that the logical answer would be all sorts of books and podcasts, but I actually get a lot of influence from folks I follow on LinkedIn. And I follow a lot of sales coaches and consultants on LinkedIn who come out of big careers in sales and are now offering solutions to salespeople. So I'll name a few. So Jen Allen is one that I follow. Again, mentioned her. Amy Volas is another one.
Okay.
Volas. She has, on paper, and you wouldn't even necessarily know this at an instant when you look at what she posts, because she does such a great job of adding value. She recruits for growing companies in their sales. They're kind of their key salespeople.
Right.
But the content she provides is all around kind of the mishaps and things to avoid and things to look out for when you are a leader in sales getting recruited by a company, and when you are a company growing, looking for your head of sales and like building out that team, and how to just kind of think about like positioning in the market and how you stand out. And she's got a really good hiring and employment scorecard that you can evaluate.
Cool.
God, I'm sure there's so many more. Keith Whiteman is another fun one. He comes out of the staffing industry. He's with a company called Bullhorn. They are essentially a applicant tracking system. So big scale CRM with all the bells and whistles for the staffing industry. And he talks a lot about really, how do you get past that? How do you get in and around those conversations with salespeople by using visuals? So he's big into kind of like, how do you start, charting things out and recapping it visually? And I'll name one more, Kyle Asay, Asay. This is an individual who is actively in sales right now. And he wasn't doing so well in sales, self-proclaimed, for a while. And then he pivoted something, put together a framework, and it blew up for him. And now he offers it and talks a lot about just kind of different ways to sell. So anyway, those are a few key folks that I pay attention to. I mean, there's a lot out there.
Yeah,
there's a lot out there.
Well, that's cool that you use social media as your influencee, right?
Yeah. I mean, these folks are doing a good job sharing their knowledge, and I learn from them, and I can help others with it too. And they've all got newsletters, and most of them have podcasts, right? So they're sharing, and I happen to be their client audience, half of their client audience, right? So that's also why I'm gaining good insight from them.
Cool. So how can our listeners get hold of you? Great
question. So as you can imagine, LinkedIn is the place I spend the majority of my time when I'm in a social channel. So you can look up Kelli Schutrop. You can also check out my website if you're interested, www.thoughtfulresound.com, which purpose of the name is really, how do you strategically and purposefully develop a sphere of influence around yourself that creates a ripple effect, elevates your audience, and brings back opportunity to you. But LinkedIn is the best way to find me.
All right. Well, we'll link to your webpage on our show page. And I asked Kelli before the show if she had a favorite quote. So as we go into our golden nugget, as we end the show today, what's your golden nugget for our audience?
Yes, golden nugget. I was shared this by a leader within an organization that I was at previously within my career. And she just shared that when you're experiencing things in your career or in your life that are just causing a ton of friction, maybe not challenging you in a good way for growth, but challenging you in a way where you're like, this just doesn't feel quite it. She said, accept it, change it, or leave, right?
Yep.
Like either figure out how to be okay with it, or modify things that are going to make it work for you and make it work for whatever other parties are involved, or pivot, do something else that's going to feed your soul. And it's not just career related, but certainly can look at it through that lens.
I see that sit around and bitch about it isn't included on that list.
No, it's not. See, and that's the piece.
Many years ago, my wife was working in a position that she did not like with a group of other professionals that didn't like the place they were working. And they were at our house one day and they were all talking about how they didn't like it. And I said, I can't take it anymore. Quit. There's other places to work. There's other things. For you. All of you quit at the same time. That'll show them. The only way to show a business that they're abusing people is to all leave and go find a better position. And within 6 months, 4 out of the 5 had left. And they changed the rules for the 5th one. Instead of abusing her, they started to give her a fair treatment, and everybody else found a better position. And it's just amazing to me, in a country where we have freedom, you are free to leave that job and go find another one, or go find another one, then leave that job. But sitting around and complaining about it doesn't change the company.
No. And having all the complaints stuck in your head doesn't do a whole lot either. Like, I'm a big fan of change it. And if you can't, then make a decision of how you want to pivot from whatever that scenario is.
And if you don't have the authority to change it, if you don't have the authority to change it, you're going to have to leave it. But anyway, that's a great quote. That is a great quote. And we learn so much from the people that we respect in businesses. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I just have a few things I want to close with. Go to winningatselling.com. We'll have Kelli's website up there for you. All the information about the show is there. Next week, Spin Selling, our book club, Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, Chapter 7, Opening the Call. And our topic is how to sell new products. Please subscribe, share the podcast with your colleagues on your social media. Go out and get better, one skill at a time.